Ready.
All right, we're now live on YouTube, so we'll go ahead and we'll begin. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Tonight, we're going to talk about the importance of self-care and what it means. And let's be honest, this topic has been widely covered. There have been books, panel discussions, and entire industries which have been built on promising or promoting self-care. But there are also a lot of myths. For example,
did we lose Frank?
I think he froze.
I think we froze.
Oops.
You're up, Marie.
Pitch hit.
Hold on. I'll be right back.
Uh-oh.
Frank, we lost you.
Technology. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everyone out there. While we're waiting,
Yes. We'll be back.
don't act like this hasn't happened to you on one of your Zoom meetings. It's just par for the course.
Exactly.
We'll just start from the top.
I heard you lost me.
Yeah, so we'll just start from the top.
Oh man, that's too
You
bad.
said for example, and then you got cut off.
Oh man. So where would you like me to start?
From the top.
From the top, okay. My pleasure. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. This evening, we're going to talk about the importance of self-care and what it means. And let's be honest, this topic has been widely covered. There are books, panel discussions, and entire industries which have been built on promoting self-care. But there are also a lot of myths. For example, do any of these statements sound familiar? Self-care is a luxury. Self-care is expensive. Self-care takes too much time. Self-care is stuff that relaxes you. Self-care is the same for everyone. Self-care is only for white women. Self-care is selfish. So these questions may sound familiar, and before we unpack all of that, let me take a moment to introduce our amazing panelists. Kim Cockerham, kick-ass survivor and thriver, and the first Black Miss South Carolina and one of the youngest ever Miss America winners. Kim has been here for 7 years. She has an accounting degree from NYU and is a project management and operations consultant. Kim has been married for 22 years and has 2 children aged 19 and 17. Trenesa Danuser, who goes by Tree. She is a public-facing communications senior executive at Estée Lauder. Fun fact, she negotiated beauty raw ingredients for tribal chiefs, literally in the jungles of Honduras. She's launched a beauty brand in the mainland China in Mandarin and traveled extensively with Dr. Andrew Weil, the father of integrative medicine. Tree is from Jacksonville, Florida. She moved to NYC from Boston and has been here also for 7 years. She's a graduate of the University of Florida with a degree in broadcast journalism and has a professional studies at Vassar and NYC Stern. Today, she's the head of branding communications and outreach at Hudson Bay Company, the parent company at Saks Fifth Avenue, and also is maintaining an active side hustle with her multicultural marketing consultancy. Tree is married to Chris and have 2 children, Dylan and Roman. Marie McGehee, currently the First Lady of Maplewood, also known as FLOMAP, and lived in Hong Kong in her last job for 4 months. Maria has also lost 75 pounds in the last 20 months. Born in Haiti and raised in Massachusetts, Marie moved to Maplewood in 2013. She has an undergrad from Boston University and an MBA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Today, she's a communications executive at Verizon. And at night, she's a super mom. She's married to this guy named Frank McGehee and has a daughter who is at Columbia High School sophomore, and the first dog, Sunshine. Michelle Swittenberg, who retired from Verizon corporate life at the age of 48. She moved to Maplewood 20 years ago after living all over the country and is originally from Trenton, New Jersey. She has an undergrad from Wharton, Penn, and an MBA from Duke. Today, she is the founder and business owner of BRWL, which is a marquee fitness organization and has marquee events such as the Triple Threat Challenge, to name others. She's married to her beloved husband, Lamont, and they have a son, Reese. So as you can see, we have an amazing, accomplished panel with us this evening. But now we're going to get into self-care and hear from this amazing panel. So Tree, let me start with you.
All right.
All right. So you've had a large, array of experiences at Estée Lauder. We talked about some of them in the bio, which are inclusive of cosmetics as well as the fashion industry. So what is your take on the narrative that's presented to women when it comes to self-care? And how has that narrative evolved over the course of your career?
Well, thanks for having me, Frank, and I'm so glad to be with this accomplished panel, and I'm glad to have had an opportunity to sweat at BRWL with all of you. So it's really, I've learned that, the self-care can come in all shapes and sizes. I think that, as women, professional women, in whatever you're doing, there's always that, me second. And there is the narrative that, if you do self-care, there's some selfishness to that. And I think that it's actually, if you don't put yourself first, then you're actually not being, you're being selfish to yourself. And I think that we're able to do all of the things we need to do when we actually do carve out that time for ourselves. And so it isn't, taking a week vacation to an all-inclusive with our girlfriend. I mean, that's definitely some self-care, but there are little things that we can do in our lives that count and matter. And so I've learned in my career that, the industry as a whole was able to thrive even during tough times because women sought out those little luxuries. And so I see self-care as a little luxury. You may not be able to buy a Balenciaga bag because it's thousands of dollars, but you can buy a lipstick, and that's a little luxury. You may not be able to go to all-inclusive resort, but you can meet a girlfriend for brunch in your community and just take a couple hours to yourself. So just sort of having it be scalable for what you have available. I didn't mean to sound like Dr. Seuss.
No, that's great, Tree. Thank you very much for that insight and that narrative. Kim.
Yes, Frank.
Good evening.
Good evening to you and all the ladies.
Yes. I'm fascinated. I have a couple of questions for you, but I'm going to start with this one. So on your journey to being crowned Miss America in 1994, and you were the first African-American woman to be crowned in South Carolina in 1993, which is phenomenal, epic, trailblazer. Can you talk about that experience and how it impacted your, sense of self-identity, and what would be your message today as a motivational speaker to women and girls when it comes to self-care?
Well, okay, so the first part of your question about my idea of beauty when I competed at Miss South Carolina. So I was 18 years old when I won Miss South Carolina. So if you think back to that time period, there was no internet. We didn't have this obsession with celebrity, with social media. So my idea, honestly, of beauty at that time was the Ebony magazines and the Jet magazines that I grew up seeing on my parents' coffee table. You know, it was Diana Ross and, you know, all of those beautiful icons that I would see every week on those publications. So I never really aspired to a beauty standard that I couldn't achieve. And then also I had those examples, but then I also had my own mom who, you know, in my house, she modeled self-care. I mean, she was and still is an entrepreneur. She was able to work a lot of hours, volunteer in the community, was involved in church, was an amazing mom, and she still had a fantastic beauty routine. She walked out of the house, she always looked phenomenal. My grandma, I remember watching her as I was growing up, sitting at her dressing table, putting powder on her face. So it was always important to me, not so much to look beautiful, but to take care of myself. They modeled that for me. So that was really my example of beauty. And then as far as what do I tell young women, you know, what I would tell young women is exactly what I tell my 17-year-old daughter, which is own the skin you're in. If you want to rock locks, rock locks. If you want to wear cut up jeans and a cut up shirt and show your midriff, do it. I don't believe in one standard of beauty. That's not how I choose to dress, but I want my daughter, her friends, and any woman to feel empowered to look and dress and wear their hair, whatever way makes them feel beautiful.
Thank you, Kim. I love that. Own the skin you're in. Be self-confident and love yourself.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. Marie. So for those who don't know a lot about you, you know, you grew up in a small suburban town in Massachusetts after coming here to the United States from Haiti when you were 2. In that town, you were the only Black student in your school, the only one. And how many students were in your school?
I mean, it wasn't a huge town, but I was the only one.
So let's fast forward to today, where you're balancing work, family, and other responsibilities. So in that balance, how do you define self-care, and how has your definition of self-care evolved in your life?
Well, first, thanks for having me, and I'm so honored to be on this panel with all of these amazing women. So, I mean, my definition of self-care has definitely evolved. I think, you know, as it's evolved for everyone on the panel and most women, right? So, as a young girl growing up in Massachusetts, in a small rural town, as the only Black family, the only Black student. I was the oldest of 3 girls. So I was really, you know, my parents didn't know anything about the United States. So everything was new. So I sort of had to blaze the trail for my family, you know, being in school. So my definition of self-care at the time was really sort of about protecting my peace, right? So I grew up in a really loving household. My parents are amazing, and they just poured so much into all of us and really invested in all of us. And I'm so grateful that, you know, I had that foundation, because going out into the world, you know, to my school, which was my world at the time, was really difficult being the only. I mean, I think that we've all experienced that at some point in our lives, but when you go from that, when you're in that environment from a very young age, like you said, we immigrated here when I was 2 years old, you know, and really through middle school, that's a really long period of time for any child to go through that level of adversity. So self-care for me was about finding ways at a young age to protect my peace, and really modeling positive behavior. And like Kim said, she had her mom. I had my mom, who, you know, was the quintessential role model for us growing up, you know, completely always dressed to the nines, always presented herself really well, just really classic and elegant. And that's what I what I really modeled, because what I was seeing in my school and my community, there wasn't really, I didn't have any other role model but my mom and the other women in our family. So then as you know, I got older and now being a corporate executive, it evolves to really making sure that you continue to protect your peace, because we have so many distractions between social media. We all have really busy lives. The fact that we could get all of these women on the panel on the same evening is a miracle, because I know how busy you all are. So it's just really carving out the time for yourself. And you know, what I've found is that, you know, there have been periods of time in my life where I've sort of lost that, where I've allowed everything else to sort of take priority over myself, because you think, like, as you said in your opening remarks, like, you think you don't have time for it, or you convince yourself that you don't have time because you're worried about your family, your job. You know, we moved to Maplewood 8 years ago, and so at the time Madison was 8, so my number one priority was making sure that she was okay, and that she was really, you know, thriving in our new community, you know, and then starting a new job at a major company. It was a lot. So I really allowed a lot of those things to take precedence. And then, you know, as sort of ignoring yourself like that, or deprioritizing yourself, eventually catches up with you. And it certainly did in my case.
Thank you, Marie. Michelle, good evening.
Good evening.
You know, the fact that you were able to retire at 48, I'm jealous. I'm 48 or 49. I'm right around that time. Like, that's impressive. That just kind of testimony to your hard work and diligence that you put in to be able to achieve that amazing goal. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about the journey from retirement to BRWL. And it's a phenomenal business. A business I'm proud to say is Black owned, woman owned. But obviously, you know, a lot of it is about, you know, health and wellness. And what inspired you? Was there a correlation with self-care that made you say, this is the type of business that I want to be, you know, the next stage in my career, and how I get back to community and frankly to fellow women? Because I know there are men and women that you know, that participate in the program. I've had the opportunity, but as you see a lot of women, you know, Black, white, different backgrounds, different, you know, shapes and sizes. But I'd love to hear more about BRWL and how it correlates with, you know, with self-care and that journey for you.
Yeah. Well, I've always loved to work out, and it's interesting that people are all pointing back to their mothers. Like, my mom was doing yoga in the 60s when I was born. I remember her dragging us to like after school yoga. So I've always had sort of this vein of fitness. I can't say I was always as dedicated as I am now to it until I probably went to college. But what I found with fitness is that it really, when I was in corporate America, kept me sane. I think, you know, there's nothing like the feeling of, you know, running maybe 5 miles in the morning and then squatting 150 pounds and then sitting in a particularly tough meeting and looking at the person across from you saying, well, yeah, you know, thinking to yourself, just that empowerment of knowing you did all of that before you came to work, I always felt was very empowering while I was working. And then when I retired, I, you know, sort of looked around to, you know, find my tribe, and I'd go and try out, you know, various classes in you know, the surrounding towns in Maplewood. And while the classes were fun and interesting and challenging, I didn't see a lot of people that looked like us. So I started, you know, as I started to meet more people, because I was one of those kind of people that, you know, while I was working, I didn't make, you know, a lot of extra friends. It's interesting because I've been here 20 something years, and I'd say the people on the panel know more people in Maplewood and South Orange than I do, because I was sort of just focused on, you know, retiring at 48. And And so as I started to meet people, you know, they'd ask me, oh, do you want to go to lunch? Do you want to go to coffee? And I'm like, oh, no, I have to go do triple threat, which was basically this workout I made up in my basement that I really enjoyed. And, you know, I started inviting other women to do it with me. And then all of a sudden I found my tribe. And we'd go to these, you know, places that I used to go to by myself. We'd go to those places together, take classes together, and I just saw like the camaraderie that it, you know, drove, like being with your tribe and with your friends and seeing people that, you know, looked like you and wanted the same things as you and had sort of the same frame of reference, and really made you feel like included in the class. So I met people in other classes, but I never felt like included. I felt like I was in someone else's world. So from that, triple threat sort of became this thing, because anyone that knows me knows that I always make things into a thing. And it became this competitive thing where, you know, just whoever showed up, they got a point for the day. And then there was an algorithm. And then there's, you know, just like somebody complained that, oh, well, why does that person get a point for walking slow and I'm walking fast? So then it became, you know, a point system. And in that journey, we, you know, were still traveling around to all of these different classes. And I met my business partner, Martise, who was teaching this class that combines boxing and yoga. And we all thought, you know, the class was great. And even in those classes, even though they were in these same spaces that we had frequented before, those classes seemed to bring together people that, you know, first of all, a diverse set of people, interesting, cool, you know, music, but also, you know, that idea of struggling really hard together and achieving. It sort of felt like triple threat. It felt like what I imagine Ironman probably feels like. I've never run an Ironman, but that idea of struggling together and then being done. So with BRWL, I wanted to create that same, you know, idea. And the reason we're in the Valley Arts District of Orange, but we also have, as you know, outdoor classes. In COVID, we've had outdoor classes in Maplewood. We still use Maplewood Y and have outdoor classes. And it's just, you know, brought together just such a cross-section and diverse group of people that, you know, I see these relationships. I see people forming friendships that they might not have otherwise formed if but for BRWL or even triple threat. So to me, it's just been interesting to see, and I think exercise is what has brought us all together.
Well, I think it's great, and I think you talked about finding your tribe, and you know, I would say, you know, go to social media, you know, and check out BRWL. You'll see some videos out there on Facebook or other people involved, and you'll see everyone in unison, you know, doing their exercises, and you know, it's great exercise, it's great fitness. And when it's over, be it 90 degrees or 9 degrees, everyone feels a sense of accomplishment, a sense of self-esteem. And I think that goes a long way with, you know, caring for yourself and self-care, you know, because you've achieved something, as you mentioned. So, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michelle has really created something that's just, you know, sometimes when people think about self-care or their self-care definition for that time that they're in is defined primarily through like a big weight loss journey like I had to experience, you know, it can be really daunting and isolating. So to find a community like BRWL where it's, you know, it's fun, it's engaging, you're in this community, you know, regardless of whether you're doing it together or virtually, it really helps to redefine how people look at that.
Thank you, Marie, and it's very true.
I think it's also helpful to have girlfriends, especially. I mean, you know, I'm a girl's girl, so to have girlfriends that have similar ideas of self-care. So some of those ideas, as we've talked about here, can be fitness, but some of it could be just, you know, once a week or once every couple of weeks, sitting down and just having coffee or going for a walk, or chatting on the phone, just, you know, completely stop, not texting, not sending emails, but literally just having a heart-to-heart on the phone, 10 minutes. I love in this community, I have found that. I have found people that fit all of those. And it doesn't matter, I just think this community is very special, but it really doesn't matter what it is I want to do. I can send a text or make a phone call and find one person to do it with me, always. So it could be, I want to go on a walk in the reservation and it's like we talked about earlier, 9 degrees. There will be somebody that will go with me. Do I want to go to, if I want to go to a brawl class, in fact, I signed up for one in the morning. I sent a text to a couple of other, what we call ourselves brawlers, and 3 of them are joining me in the morning. So, there's I love the fact that as women, all of us on the panel have somehow been able, and maybe we can talk about this, we've been able to cultivate almost a self-care group of people that hold us accountable for that self-care, no matter what it is.
I wanted to add to that, Kim, and it's really important, sort of identifying your group. And I often would see, the ladies who run, and it's some awful cold or rainy weather, and they just look like they come wind or snow or whatever, they found a way to get themselves out there. And I'm convinced that it was less about sort of the health benefits of it and more about the bond that they had and sort of that accountability that we all had for each other. And when we would do the brawl classes outside, we don't have a mirror. And so you always look around, the person in front of you or next to you, and there's something very magical about what that does when you're sort of seeing someone that's doing it and you're sort of relying on them to sort of be your human mirror to motivate you to continue to do it. And so when I would watch, I have a neighbor across the street that she's a runner, and I know that she likes to run alone, but I often see these groups of women and they meet at some ungodly early time, and they're running and it's terrible weather and they're still there. And that's really, I think it's to your point, Kim, it really is sort of the friendship and the bond and that level of accountability that those types of group fitness groups or self-care groups can really lend.
Thank you, Tree, and thank you, Kim and Marie and Michelle. The camaraderie, I think that's a very important point. And Tree, by the way, I see those ladies running, because when I run with my neighbors, usually we start at 6:15 in the morning. We're running this way down Ridgewood, and a pack of 15 to 20 ladies, all ladies, by the way, are running that way. We see them a couple days a week. But I want to talk about, when you talked about, Kim mentioned like she could pick up the phone, send a text, and and fellow ladies respond and are there to have, to be together. But I also want to touch on the mental aspect of self-care. I think especially under COVID-19, it's been hard. It's been difficult for all of us. I don't think anyone has been not impacted in some capacity, and mental health is such an important part. What are your thoughts, and this is for anyone to answer, about self-care in relation to your mental health? How do you manage your self-care from a mental health perspective?
I've gotten really good at saying no. I used to be horrible at it. But that has been my self-care. Marie mentioned protecting your peace. Sometimes when somebody asks you to do something, it is a worthwhile thing. It is something you believe in and you want to do it. But it just may not fit into what works for you right now. So for example, I had someone just recently, a really good friend, ask me to do something which really wouldn't take a whole lot of time, but I've made a lot of commitments in March and April. And right before this call, I sent her a message and said, girl, I love you, but I just can't do it. And I just posted about that on social media a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of days ago, maybe. The saying that we always say that she thought she could, and so she did. I like to flip that and say she thought she could, but she needed a break. So she said no. And so that, it's not, I think it's For me, in my 40s, when I turned 40, I kind of started to transition to more of the, I want to be there for everybody. I want to be there for my family. I want to be there for my friends and all of that. But I also recognize, just like on a plane, you have to put your oxygen mask on first. And so when I feel as though my oxygen mask is getting a little loose, I need to stop. I need to refocus, give myself what I need so I continue on and give my family, my friends, and my community what it needs.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Kim. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the mental aspect of self-care and how it is, in your thoughts on that?
Sorry, go ahead, Marie.
Well, I mean, I was going to say it's a big aspect of it. I mean, for me, when I started on my most recent, when I reignited my self-care journey about 18 or 20 months ago, it was really from the point of I need to lose weight because some, ignoring myself and putting myself last perpetually for years caught up with me, and then I needed to do something about it physically. But now, as Michelle was saying earlier, when she worked in corporate, it's much less about the physical aspect. It's okay, I need this to start my day with. This morning was a 45-minute run, so I can just get in the mindset for what I have to tackle for the rest of the day. And I usually work out twice a day so that I can start my day with that, and then kind of unwind it with that mindset and just kind of let the day go. So it's really become a huge mental health release, I should say, and especially during COVID this past year.
Yeah, and I think I'm, now sort of retired, but not really, because being an entrepreneur is way harder. I think, I feel I can feel that I'm a nicer person when I work out, and I feel calmer, and it also gives me perspective. Nothing I mean, as much as I love working out with others, nothing running by yourself to just work out a problem or just gain some perspective on issues. But I also think that, similar to what Kim said, just the ability to, just be able to talk to people. I think COVID can be isolating. I think, even though we're, on Zooms all day or, in a class all day, you're still, sort of trying to stay away from people. So I think that, I've had more people, I think, feel more free to talk about, having the blues or feeling a little sad and things like that, just because, we are in COVID, and I feel like people are speaking up more. But I also think that, it's up to all of us to check in on our friends and ask them, how they're doing. I just, because it's, especially in the Black community, it's not, something that we talk about a lot. But I mean, I know unfortunately, quite a few Black women, corporate women, who have committed suicide. So I do think that it's, important to speak up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I'm glad that you brought up the perspective of sort of mental health and crying out for help, especially within the Black community. I'm a child of a shrink. My mother's a psychotherapist. My brother was a psychotherapist. I have a niece that's studying psychotherapy. And I think that because of COVID, there's going to be a great need for people to talk to, professionals to talk to. And so I'm glad we acknowledge that in the Black community, there has been some taboo connected with sort of admitting that you need, psychological help. And I know that there's more and more out there to address that in our community. But I also just wanted to double back because, Marie's working out 2 times a day, and Michelle's running, and Kim's doing stuff. And I also, just to the point of self-care and sort of doing it at your own pace, I am not in the league of these women. They've all beat me at triple threat. And so I want to just acknowledge that you have to take on self-care at your own pace. And I feel just as accomplished when I finish 15 or 30 minutes on the elliptical with no resistance. But in my mind, I did something. It was something that I know was better than not doing it. And so I just want to sort of wrap my arms around the people that are in my gang that are sort of like, I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm not ready to run a marathon. I'm certainly not working out twice a day, but for whatever step you take towards your own self-care, whatever the duration, whatever the intensity, it's something that's good for you. And I honor that, because I honor that in myself.
Absolutely. I mean, for when I started on this, there was no way that I was working out twice a day. The most that I was doing was just trying to walk our dog around the block without getting breathless. And that took like 10 minutes, so that, and that was fine. At the time, but just going back to what you were saying about the Black community for a minute, I mean, we have been groomed to pray on it, right? And yes, I believe in the power of prayer, but the mental health aspect, still has to be a part of it. That you can't simply pray about it. We need to normalize mental health in the Black community for sure. And I think that COVID has helped do that, but we still have more work to do there.
But one of the other things that I've seen as a curse, and all of us have teenage children or younger people, in our lives, is that the constant barrage of social media. Because I think people look at all these beautiful trainers on Instagram, and those just don't, for whatever reason, can't connect to the fact that no one wakes up looking like that, and probably those trainers don't actually look like that. They are hitting their best angle, it's the best lighting, etc. And I think like that constant scrolling of everyone's best life, I can see how that could be impactful to, especially in COVID, when a lot of people might just be sitting around scrolling. It's impactful to, I can't tell you, like if I sit and watch any show about like cleaning your house or hoarding or decorating your house, I'm like up organizing something. So I can, I feel like it has that same kind of impact. So I think, that's another thing that we have to watch out for and remind ourselves that, people don't wake up looking like this. The images we see on our phones.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that's a great point. There have been a couple really good points that we've made here. And one, going quickly back to Tree, is, you have to go at your own pace. Self-care is listening to yourself. It sounds like that's what I'm hearing. And if yourself is saying, hey, walking the dog around the block is my commitment to myself to do better for myself, then that's what you do. If it's doing your bike in the morning, whatever it is, it's something. And you have to work within those confines and build your base and go from there. And I think that's important that, people take away. Part of finding that inner peace we talked about is listening to yourself and going from there. And, and then I think eventually as you reach out to others, you'll find that tribe and go from there. And the mental aspect is clearly as vital as the physical aspect, right? Because, when you're doing that action, you're mentally preparing yourself to physically do something. So if you're not there mentally, you will not be there physically. And I think those are great points, which all of you have made. And Michelle, you touched on something that was one of my questions. So I'm going to go right to it. And that is, we are perpetually surrounded, by advertisements, social media posts about self-care and everywhere we go, really. And I guess my question is for everyone on the panel is, how have these communications impacted you or your personal overall definition of self-care? And how do you think, in terms of how do you think women in our society have embraced these defined definitions that come through social media as well as advertising?
Yeah, I think social media is a blessing and a curse, because I think on the positive side, for a second, I think we've all gotten exposure to brands entrepreneurs, things like that we would have known nothing about. Like, I know there's a group of my friends that, take a class that's based in Boston every week, and they would have never known about, that trainer in Boston. I think all of us have probably tried all kinds of new products. There's a woman who has a curated Black wellness business, beauty business, sells products. And some of the brands that, she features on her Instagram are brands that I would have never tried, and now I tried them and love them. So I think, as much as it's a curse sometimes at looking, at things that are, just impossible, I think it does give a lot of small brands a lot of exposure that they wouldn't otherwise get.
Also like that we now, social media, I feel, is more representative of all women. So I love that you don't just see the perfectly angled, airbrushed picture of someone that you could never look like, but you see 40 and 50-year-old women who, are showing you their beauty routine possibly, or maybe they are being used in an ad, which you would never have seen before. So I really do love that aspect of over the last year or maybe two. I think society as social media's definition of beauty has broadened. Now, it could very well be, I don't understand technology. It's possible because that is my age bracket, that is what comes up on my social media feed. Whatever it is, I like it. And so I do think that is, that I think for me, that has really helped me as I've started to mature, that I can mature gracefully and I can see images. All the images aren't of 20-year-olds. I see images of beauty that reflect my reality. Because I'm not gonna, as much as it would be fabulous, I'm never gonna be 20 again.
Kim, I don't think you have to worry. You're going to always be gorgeous. But social media has definitely sort of democratized, a lot of things. We're all editors. We all have opinions, and the phone, the laptop is really giving everyone a point of view that can be shared publicly. And I think that that's really, from my experience being in the industry, I was there when it was just sort of what you saw in the glossy magazine, and that was sort of the gospel, to the burgeoning moment of when social media came to be the most important marketing tool in the industry. And the diversity came in because so many other people were able to play. If you only had 20 magazines and 80 pages in the magazine, there was an editing of who could get in. And when the social media space opened up, it just allowed for more voices, more faces, more points of view. And that's really where the democratization came in. And then when you have that platform, you can express that you want to see more of that 40-year-old woman that's doing her beauty regimen, or that beautiful Black woman who has extra dark skin and you never got to see her in a glossy magazine. And so there was just this moment where the opportunity to say what you want and say who you wanted to see, and we were all editors. That's when we were able to see the spectrum of beauty was always there. There just wasn't a space for it before social media for it to all be represented. And so this was a great thing. While it is a curse and it is harmful, and there's definitely things there that there are goals that, hashtag goals, no one can meet those goals, but there's definitely a place for all of us in that. And we can see ourselves, and we can also tell large scale corporations that we want more of a certain thing, and they're listening. That's where they go first now in businesses, to social media, to hear directly from the consumer. They've sort of surpassed the editor who curated our lives, and they're going right to the consumer, and she has a voice and she's being heard now. Yeah. And they don't always get it right, but at least we can be heard.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a blessing and a curse. As a marketer, I definitely use it as a tool for sure, to promote my brand, but or my company's brand, I should say. But then as a mom, I have more of a hateful relationship, because I'm very concerned about what are the images and posts that are just being like blasted, that, you know, my daughter and other young girls, young women are being influenced by, you know, standards that are you know, unattainable, because we know that they're not real, because as you said, it's like it goes back to certain camera angles and lighting and, you know, all of that stuff. And so you need to really just, so it's been a vehicle for us to teach Madison and the other young people in our life to look at everything with a really critical eye, you know, and to think critically. But then, you know, my nearly 50-year-old self is like, I love the community aspect of it. I love the discovery. I love being able to just to discover brands that I wouldn't have known otherwise, like the luxurious wellness and orange and just all of the, be exposed to a wide suite of products that I wouldn't have known. And then even some of what the larger brands have been able to do, like Peloton, for the Peloton users out there, there's a group, a Facebook group called BRWL Magic, Peloton Edition. And if you own a Peloton, you're in that group, and then you're exposed to, I think now, what, 20,000 Black women from all over the country, all over the world, and you see all of the stories, all of their journeys. And going back to your point about democratization of self-care, you see everything in the BRWL Magic Peloton group. So it's really cool and inspiring and educational and motivating. So it's both helpful and harmful as well.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Tree. And, you know, let's talk to anyone who's watching tonight, fellow women, fellow individuals, about some of the hurdles to get where you are all today. And one of the things I think is critical to recognize is that it seems like self-care is at perpetual odds with time. People don't think they have time. And I think this is especially true for women. I mean, I heard just this evening about the juggling acts of being a professional, being a mother, other responsibilities, and your prioritization or stack rank, whatever type of terms you want to use, you know, to kind of figure out where your self-care fits into the hierarchy. So for those who are really listening tonight and you know, want to continue their journey, elevate their journey, or start their journey, what type of advice do you have for getting to that next stage? And how do you personally, maybe in that same vein, stay motivated at the level you are today in your journeys?
Michelle, do you want to go?
I would say, I mean, I really do believe Nike got it right by saying just do it. I think making, even if it's 5 minutes, 7 minutes, you can Google there's a 7-minute workout that the New York Times published a couple of years ago, and it's actually a really good workout in 7 minutes. But I think just setting aside, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and putting it on your calendar, like for me, it helps to put it on my calendar and then just get it done. When I was working, I used to travel all over the world, and if I had it so I'd put it on my calendar. My assistant would, you know, translate it to whatever time, wherever I was going to be, and I would get it in. And I felt like just making, you know, almost like that little commitment to myself of writing it down helped. I think that's a good first step, just making the commitment of trying to do anything, just 5 minutes. You know, walk around the block. And then eventually, I think it snowballs into more.
And I would add on to that, you know, fitness is really important in my life, Michelle's, you know, all of the panelists' lives. But I think when you talk about self-care, it's a lot more broad than that. And so I would add on to what Michelle said, that you know, every stage of our lives. So if I think about like my life years ago when I had 2 small children, and I was not interested in fitness at the time. I didn't really know much about it, but I had 2 small children and I needed to provide myself with self-care. So, you know, sometimes they went to bed at 8 o'clock. I would kiss my husband goodnight and I would go upstairs, take a warm bath and read a book until I passed out. To me, that was self-care. You know, so you really have to take whatever those moments are that are good for you, that feed you in whatever stage of life you're in. It could be it could be something like, just like Michelle said, going on a walk. It could be a meditation. There are plenty of them on YouTube, where you can just sit with a cup of coffee with your eyes closed and just have a moment of inner peace. Anything you need to do to be able to protect your peace, one, but also just know that I have made a commitment to myself every single day, even if it's just 5 minutes. And then, yes, if you can fit in exercise, that's great, because that is something that will, provide you with longevity. It will provide you with health. You know, if you do a lot of it, it'll provide you with what Marie has had, weight loss and that type of thing. But most importantly, I think just doing those things for yourself and taking those moments, and then whatever it is you need going forward, if it's longer time, if it's something else, just continue to always make that commitment to yourself.
Yeah, I would add, I think another aspect of self-care is really being willing to have those tough conversations and receive the feedback, right? We've talked a lot about exercise, and that's a huge part of self-care, certainly. But the other aspect of it, of self-care, is diet, like what you put in your body. If you don't have, like, it doesn't matter how much you work out, like if your diet is not what it should be, then the workout part it will help, but it won't really get you over the hump. And sometimes that's really being open to the feedback, hearing it. And I mean, that's what I had to do in my case. I went to what's really kicked off my journey, and I'm going to share this for anybody, if it's helpful to anyone listening, is that I went to a doctor's appointment, an annual physical. I'm generally, I have always been a healthy person, and my doctor, who actually lives in South Orange, and is always like, tell it straight. She was like, you're doing great. All of your numbers look great, but your blood sugar is out of control. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, if you have another test like this, we're calling it diabetes. And I was like, what? And that runs in my family. It's like, I obviously know my family history. And so that's like what I was saying before, like eventually, if you don't take care of yourself, certain things will catch up with you. Well, that my family history, because I wasn't taking care of myself, prioritizing myself, it caught up with me. And then I was looking at, at a diabetes thing. And so she was like, so what are you going to do about it? And so I had to force myself to actually not just hear what she was saying, but put myself on a trajectory to do something about it. And it was hard. I mean, and at the time, the only thing I knew how to do at that point was walk. So I started walking, and then I started building from there, but really being honest with yourself, and really being present to the life to the things that you need to do in order to have the life that you truly want.
And I think that the idea of just making a goal for yourself, and it can be a little goal. I feel like I'm the sort of I want to mediate, because there's, you can sort of go all in, and then you can also say, tonight I'm just going to go to bed 30 minutes earlier than I normally do. Or tomorrow I'm going to wake up 30 minutes earlier when the house is quiet, and I'm just going to sit, like Kim said, with a cup of coffee and just be quiet and just listen to myself breathe. And setting those small goals. And that's really what happened for me. I had a big birthday coming up, and I'm like, do I want to be this at this age? And, and then, you do look at sort of your family history, and you sort of see the things that are cropping up, the heart disease and the diabetes, and, the sort of, what quality of life do I want to have, when I get of a certain age? And so making those choices, but sometimes it's those little goals. And I do take that time to be quiet, and I'll pray, and I'll pray for my day, and I'll organize myself. But that's my self-care. But it's got to be so personal. And, we're 4 women with our own stories. And, we were invited to be here because, something we've done is working for us, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And so if you get nothing else from this hour that we've been talking, is that you find your crew. Who are your people? Who's going to hold you accountable? What are those small goals? And really understanding, what are you doing it for? Because if you don't understand why your self-care is so important, then it's kind of just sort of going through the motion. But you really have to subscribe to why you're making this choice for yourself. Is it for you? Ultimately, that will trickle to your family, into your relationships, into how you perform at work, whatever those choices are. But, I did what's working for me, and I don't get it right all the time, and I backslide a lot. But, once you start getting some traction and you sort of see the results, just sort of really selfish, and you don't want to lose too much ground. So even when you say, oh, that's okay, I'll have my third pina colada, but then you'll always try to make it up, because you know what it feels like to accomplish those goals. You know what your body feels like, what your mind feels like. But all I would say is just like, do what works for you. And that's what I've been doing. And I'm surrounded by, beasts. They're like so inspiring, but I'm not at that level, but I do what I can.
Yeah, and every day is not perfect. So after this panel, if anybody sees me at any of the local bakeries, do not judge me, right?
No judgment, because I'm right there with you.
I still go to them, but it's all,
Yeah, I think circling back to, Kim mentioned this, and I think we glossed over it, but I think also to make room for good habits, I think getting rid of the things that don't serve you is so important. And I think it takes a certain level of, for some people it takes it's a bigger effort. It takes a certain level of bravery to say no, but I think that especially as I've gotten older, I'm in my 50s now. So I think, I've learned to say no. I've learned to, just sort of say, I hate to say this, I'm just going to say it, but sometimes you have friends that, it was toxic, and you're just like, why am I even, bothering to hang out with that person? It doesn't.
Preach.
And that's been a blessing in COVID, because you only talk to the people that you wanted to talk to. So it made room in my life for people that I really, didn't get to know. Like I've met Trenesa, I've met Marie, and Kim, I was already friends with. But I think when you start to, use those moments to take stock, you can also say, I'm not going to just start doing things and adding more onto what I'm already doing, but let me stop the things that I just didn't like anyway. Like, just be brave and, get rid of it. Like, I'm actually purging my closet right now, so I'm being brave and getting rid of things. So I think I did that, with people and ideas and things and habits in COVID. So
self-care is curating your life.
Yeah, when you posted that on your social media, the meme about saying no, that resonated with so many people. I used that I took it from you, and I posted on International Women's Day because it was like so on point,
And I say it in the kindest way possible. I try to let people know that it's nothing personal. And it's, like I said, even things that I enjoy. So I recently have a group of friends, some of them may be on here, who are doing a workout together once a week for 4 weeks, and then they re-up another 4 weeks. And I would love to do it, and I have done it with them a couple of times, but every time it's time to commit to it, even though I'm friends with each of them and I want to spend time with them, I don't want to commit. I don't want to make that commitment every week at 7 a.m. or whatever it is. So I've said no. That's a simple thing, but it's something that it doesn't always have to be you're saying no to something you don't want to do. Sometimes it's just you're saying no because you don't have room, like Michelle said, you don't have room for it in your life right now. Or you don't want to be committed. I definitely am guilty of that, of saying no because I just don't want to be committed to something. Maybe I'll show up but I don't want to be committed to showing up, because once I say yes, then I'm a person of my word. So I'm committed and I have to come. But I don't know how I'm going to feel in a week. So I may not want to come.
Well, the pandemic has given us all permission to really make choices. And even as we're sort of inching out and seeing light at the end of the tunnel, we've all felt sort of relieved that we don't have FOMO because nobody's doing anything. And we also felt relieved because we weren't overcommitted. And so if there's, a lot of terrible things that have come out of this, but I think there's also been some behavioral modification that we've all experienced. That's a good thing. And then hopefully we won't sort of go all in once we're sort of maskless and vaccinated and oversubscribing ourselves, because there was something so liberating to being able to say, I'm not going to do it, and not having that tug of obligation. And so sort of that ability to sort of smile and say, no, love you, no, and take that time. And I hope that we don't sort of revert back to our old behavior of sort of being super spread thin and overcommitted, because we've really had this great learning period to sort of exhale and see what it feels like to not have to be somewhere and to do something. And, we may have said yes to too many Zoom things, but I mean, there's something about sort of like having to leave the house and be somewhere, and in your mind, you really don't want to be there, but there's that obligation. And so I want to savor and save a little bit of that for post-COVID.
Yeah, and also just, I think for me, COVID has forced me to really step back and start with what I'm grateful for, starting with gratitude. And that in and of itself could be, if you do nothing else, starting with gratitude, instead of like dwelling in everything that's wrong, because there's a lot about life right now that's really tough and heavy for a lot of people. But what are the things in your life that you can truly be grateful for? Could be an act of self-care that in and of itself.
Well, I want to, we're kind of at the end of our time, and I want to say thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Tree. And thank you, Marie, for sharing your stories and speaking on your journeys. I think we learned a lot tonight. We learned that self-care is not just physical, but it's also mental and spiritual, and that all three of these factors have to be incorporated into whatever journey that you take. We also learned about finding your own tribe, finding people that believe in you and will be there for you and lift you up in every step that you take, and how important it is that this journey, although it is self, it is also collaborative and camaraderie. And we learned about finding your inner peace, what's important to you or what's important now. When I say what's important now, that's a win. What's important now. And I think that is the journey that we all have to continue to take or start to take, regardless of what's around us, as we talked about in the social media and the advertising. We have to try to just stay keenly focused on taking each and every step. And that's really at your pace, you'll find your inner peace. And like Kim said, own the skin you're in. Be proud, love yourself, be proud of who you are in this moment and who you want to be in your next moment. So again, I really want to thank you for opening up and sharing your personal stories with our viewers tonight, and for those who will watch this on YouTube. And I know that all four of you are accessible through social media, and I encourage anyone who wants to learn more about Michelle and Tree and Kim and Marie to reach out to them. I'm sure that they would help you and be ambassadors for you in your journey. And before we end, I also want to give a shout out to Glenn Michalowski, who is our Assistant Township Administrator, who was kind enough to be with us tonight to help with this panel, and to Ann Archuleta, who is the Director of our Cultural Affairs, and who is here tonight as well. So with that, I want to say thank you again. Thank you for joining us. Love your